The broadcast that shook Earth. The room was silent. Every diplomat, general, and official in Earth's Terran High Council chamber stared at the massive holoscreen suspended in the center of the room. Flickering in ghostly blue light was a looped broadcast, grainy and shaky, but unmistakably real. Children. Human children. Thin, barefoot, dirt-streaked, and shackled in chains that clinked with every movement. They toiled inside what looked like a mining pit on a barren red moon, the air heavy with dust. Their bodies bore signs of malnourishment and injury. Overseers, clearly non-human, wielded shock batons and barked commands in the Empire's common tongue. Some of the children were speaking English. Admiral Leona Voss leaned forward, arms locked on the table, her jaw clenched tight. She'd served in the Terran Navy for 30 years, but this pierced her deeper than any battlefield ever could. This was transmitted from a Velikar sector, said Director Han Ji, head of Earth's Interstellar Intelligence Bureau, intercepted by a smuggler working with the Resistance on the Rim worlds. We've confirmed the children's DNA profiles. They're from the Earthborn population of the Lost Colony ships Endurance and Argosy, presumed destroyed in deep space over 100 years ago. So they weren't lost, Voss said coldly. They were taken. A ripple of gasps filled the room. President Amina Dartsi stood from her seat, staring at the screen. How long? Generations, likely, Han replied. We suspect the Empire raised them as slaves. Condition them. They've likely done this to others too, but these are ours. A sharp crack rang out as Voss's fist slammed against the metal table. This changes everything. Until now, Earth had held to a fragile neutrality with the Galactic Empire. Humanity had expanded, yes, but mostly inwards, focused on terraforming, diplomacy, and technological innovation. The Empire had always viewed them as an upstart species. Dangerous, perhaps, but manageable. The occasional border tension flared, but peace endured. That peace died today. There are rules, muttered Counselor Dre from the Europa colonies. Even the Empire adheres to interstellar accords. Enslaving minors. This violates every law in the Accord of Sentience. They never saw us as equals, Voss growled. We were a resource, livestock, and now we know they've been farming our children like animals. Another video file played, this one more recent. A young boy, no older than 10, stumbled and fell under the weight of a mining cart. An alien slaver struck him with a baton. The child didn't scream. He didn't even cry. He just stood up in silence, robotic, broken. The room trembled with fury. President Dartsi turned to Voss. How quickly can you mobilize the fleet? 72 hours. Voss replied without hesitation. And I won't wait for votes or red tape. This isn't diplomacy. This is war. You'll have my executive order, Dartsi said firmly. Unleash Protocol Ragnarok. A murmur of alarm spread among the council members. Ragnarok was a Terran contingency plan whispered about in backroom meetings and locked away behind the highest security clearances. It was never meant to be used unless Earth faced extinction or needed to wage a total annihilation war. Now, it would be humanity's sword of vengeance. General Raoul Singh tapped into the central display, loading fleet positions and mobilization orders. All Terran space assets are on standby. Dreadnoughts Goliath, Red Dawn, and Ares can arrive at Carex, 7 within 3 days. That's where the mining site is located. Admiral Voss stepped back, watching the stars align in tactical projections. We won't negotiate. We won't warn them. They touched our children. We respond with fire. Ma'am, one young lieutenant said nervously, there are Empire civilians on those planets. Voss's eyes were steel. So were ours. Across EarthNet, the footage spread within hours. Billions of humans saw the same images. It wasn't just a political issue anymore. It was personal. Across the Sol system, factories ramped up arms production. Veterans re-enlisted. Volunteers surged. Even pacifist nations lifted their weapons bans. In the Martian dome cities, protests turned into recruitment rallies. On Luna, entire families swore blood oaths to fallen children. From orbital platforms to ice colonies in the outer belt, one message echoed. No more chains. No more mercy. 3 days later, the flagship Goliath dropped out of slip space over Kerex-7. It didn't issue a greeting. It didn't wait for permission. Its guns roared. Retaliation unleashed. Kerex-7 burned. From orbit, the mining world looked like a dying ember. Cracks of fire splitting its surface, columns of smoke rising from shattered slave compounds. The Terran fleet's arrival had been sudden, brutal, and absolute. Admiral Leona Voss stood on the bridge of the Goliath, arms crossed, eyes locked on the holographic display of the planet below. The main slave center, marked Compound Delta Red, was already in ruins. Strike teams were sweeping through the wreckage, rescuing survivors and executing identified slavers. She tapped her comms. Status update. Ground teams report. A voice crackled through her earpiece. This is Colonel Arden Cross. Delta Red is secured. We found 287 human miners. Ages range from 5 to 17. Some are in critical condition. Medical evac underway. We've also located mass graves. Voss didn't flinch, but her jaw clenched. How many? Too many. The words hung heavy in the silence. On the ground, dust blew over a shattered landscape. Colonel Cross marched through the smoking ruins with his squad, all clad in black assault armor bearing the Terran Eagle. Their boots crunched over bloodied stone and twisted metal. The slave compound looked more like a prison built into hell itself. The children they found weren't the same as the ones Earth remembered. They were pale, skeletal, with hollow eyes and branding across their backs. Some recoiled in fear. Others stared with eerie indifference. Cross knelt beside a boy no older than 9. His arms were raw from old restraints. "It's all right now," Cross said softly, removing his helmet. "You're safe." The boy blinked slowly. "Are you from Earth?" Cross nodded. "Yeah, I'm from Earth. We're here to take you home." The child didn't cry. He just whispered, "I don't know what home means." A medic gently took the boy's hand and led him to the evac shuttle. Cross stood, a rage simmering just beneath his calm exterior. He keyed into command. "Admiral, we've found data terminals. I'm sending encrypted files now, shipment manifests, prisoner logs, overseer rosters." This wasn't just one planet. It's an entire system. They were running a network. The screen lit up aboard the Goliath. Files scrolled rapidly. Dozens of planets, thousands of slave transports, breeding stations, experimental labs. And names. Names of children. Human children. "They've been harvesting us," Voss said grimly. "For centuries." She turned to her tactical officer. "Initiate Phase 2. No survivors among the slave masters. Target their infrastructure, shipyards, refineries, command stations." Admiral." Within minutes, Earth's orbital artillery unleashed a second wave. High-velocity kinetic strikes cratered the surface of Kerex-7's industrial zones. Targeted EMP blasts knocked out escape vessels. Drone swarms swept the atmosphere, hunting Empire loyalists trying to flee. There was no declaration, no parley, only fire. The Galactic Empire's regional command on Kerex-7 was in chaos. Governor Zeltherax, a tall, crimson-scaled Velkin, screamed at his aides as the walls shook around him. They weren't supposed to act this fast. "We had agreements. Protocols." One of his aides whimpered. "The humans are not following protocols. They didn't even send a warning." "Animals," Therax spat. "Savages pretending to be civilized." His transmission request to Imperial Central was met with static. Earth's jamming systems were complete and merciless. Outside, a Terran gunship hovered above the governor's palace. It loosed a single railgun slug through the central dome. The building collapsed in a cloud of red dust and flame. Governor Therax's name joined the execution list. Back on Earth, the response was unified and furious. Protests turned to war rallies. Media channels no longer debated, only declared. Politicians who once urged restraint were drowned out by a population that had seen too much. On every screen across the Sol system, a simple message played on loop. "For every child you enslaved, a world shall burn." Civilian transports became supply ships. Colonists volunteered for the front lines. Tech companies retooled for war production. The AI Coordination Network, Project Obelisk, activated under military control, rerouting logistics at light-speed precision. And still, more evidence poured in. Encrypted logs detailed human breeding programs on the icy moons of Sector Varn, where children were genetically modified and sold as gladiators or lab specimens. One file showed an auction. A Terran girl, age 12, sold for 9,000 credits to a military research lab. Admiral Voss viewed it only once. Then she issued a standing order. All Empire research facilities tied to slave operations are to be annihilated. No exceptions. No survivors. The Terran fleet moved swiftly, system by system. In orbit over Varn, 4, Admiral Voss gave the final command. Begin cleansing protocol. As the beams lit up the cold void of space, and yet another Empire world fell silent, she turned to her crew. They want to see what humanity truly was, she said. Now they will. The Empire breaks. High Lord Virex of the Galactic Empire slammed his clawed hand against the crystalline table, cracking it down the middle. The War Council chamber, deep within the Imperial Citadel on Valiser Prime, fell into stunned silence. Holographic reports floated before them. Red-marked systems, destroyed colonies, shattered fleets. Dozens of slave hubs were no longer operational. Hundreds of transport lanes had gone dark. They were supposed to be fractured, Virex growled. A young species. Chaotic. Unpredictable. Not this. The Empire's grand strategist, a withered, gray-bearded Solari named Yolan, stared grimly at the reports. We underestimated them. Gravely. The humans did not react as other species do. They did not protest. They did not negotiate. They did not stall. They executed. And now our citizens revolt, spat Governor Talvon. We're receiving distress calls from the Rethali colonies. The slaves there have turned on their masters. They claim they were inspired by Terran fire. Entire planets are rising. Virex's eyes blazed. The humans have started a galactic insurrection. Yolan simply nodded. They didn't come to conquer. They came to end something. In orbit above Valiser Prime, Earth's most advanced war fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect silence. The Goliath, Red Dawn, and Valkyrie led the formation, accompanied by 1,000 support vessels and AI-driven combat drones. They were not there for diplomacy. They were there for judgment. Admiral Leona Voss stood at the forward observation deck, expression unreadable. She stared at the heart of the Empire, the jewel of their dominion, now in her crosshairs. She tapped her wrist pad. Colonel Cross, confirm infiltration. Confirmed. His voice came over the comm. Insertion Team Alpha has entered the palace perimeter. Resistance is minimal. The Empire's elite guard is already fracturing. Some are laying down arms. Good. Proceed. On the surface, chaos reigned. Valiser's once proud citizens hid in their marble towers, watching the sky rain fire. Colonial insurgents, once beaten into submission, had risen. The Terran infiltration squads cut through the palace defenses with surgical precision, moving like shadows. Leading them was Colonel Arden Cross, clad in dark nano-armor, his plasma rifle humming. They stormed through halls lined with statues of former emperors, passing murals glorifying centuries of conquest and subjugation. The Terran flags now draped over many of them, symbols of justice where once stood tyranny. In the throne chamber, the Empress of the Empire waited. A tall, porcelain-skinned figure, veiled in shimmering blue, she sat rigidly on a throne of living crystal. Around her, advisors whispered frantic counsel. The doors burst open. Terran soldiers swept in, rifles raised. Arden Cross stepped forward, his helmet retracting to reveal his scarred face. Empress Valexia, he said coldly, under Article 1 of the Children's Protection Accords, you are charged with the enslavement, genetic manipulation, and extermination of human minors across 13 systems. You will answer for your crimes. The Empress stood slowly. You think you're different? You become monsters. Cross didn't blink. No, we're what monsters fear. The Empress glanced at her guards. None moved. Some looked away. Others dropped their weapons. She stepped down from her throne and raised her hands. I surrender. The next broadcast shook the galaxy. Live from Velicer Prime, Earth streamed the military tribunal for the entire slaver caste. Alien aristocrats, scientists, merchants, and military officials, all those tied to the child exploitation networks, were judged, sentenced, and executed. There were no hidden courts, no secret verdicts. Everything was public. Each child's name was read aloud before sentence. For every execution, another slave world revolted. For every confession, another species defected to Earthside. In the following days, the Galactic Empire fractured. Dozens of star systems seceded, forming new coalitions, some aligned with Earth, others choosing independence for the first time in millennia. Terran fleets became enforcers of new order, not by conquest, but by trust. Freed alien populations viewed humans as avengers, brutal but righteous. The Ravuan, a race once allied with the Empire, pledged full allegiance to Earth, citing honor debts after Terran forces liberated their hatchling farms from Empire breeding experiments. The Drell Confederation, once neutral, joined the Terran Accord after discovering their own children were sold to Empire labs alongside human youth. Even some former Imperial admirals defected, offering up intelligence in return for amnesty. In her private command chamber aboard the Goliath, Admiral Voss met with Colonel Cross. "The galaxy's burning," she said, hands behind her back. "But this isn't over yet." Cross nodded. "There are still facilities out there. Ones we haven't found. One's still running. We'll find them," Voss replied. "And when we do—" "No pity," Cross said. Voss allowed herself a rare nod. "No pity." A notification chimed. The AI voice of Project Obelisk spoke calmly. New slave transport signatures identified in Sector Callus. Estimated 2,300 miners aboard. Orders. Voss didn't hesitate. Intercept and disable. Ready extraction teams. Execute with extreme force. Earth had become a force of nature. Not an empire, not a conqueror, but something far more terrifying. A reckoning. No chains remain. The ruins of a Zitharon enclave smoldered beneath a twilight sky. Once a hidden facility deep within a frozen moon, it had been the crown jewel of the Empire's bioengineering program. An industrial lab where human and alien children were dissected, mutated, and improved to suit slaver markets. Now it was a crater. Admiral Leona Voss stood on the rim, cold wind tugging at her long coat. Around her, Terran medics and engineers moved in coordinated silence. Rescue shuttles hovered overhead, loading survivors, malnourished, malformed, and silent. Many couldn't speak. Some couldn't move on their own. Some weren't even recognizable as human anymore. Colonel Arden Cross approached from behind, a sleeping child wrapped in a thermal blanket in his arms. "She's the last one," he said softly. She didn't have a name, just a number. 3279C. Voss knelt beside the girl and gently brushed a lock of hair from her pale forehead. The girl flinched. Voss whispered, "No one will ever put a chain on you again." The girl didn't answer. She was already asleep. Safe. Back in orbit, Earth's fleet executed the final phase of Operation Judgment, the systematic dismantling of every known slave processing node in the galaxy. One by one, AI-piloted cruisers tracked down fleeing slaver vessels, raided data vaults, and purged records, ensuring no one could rebuild what had been destroyed. Velicer Prime, the former seat of the Empire, was stripped of its regalia. The crystal palaces were torn down. A monument was built in their place, the Pillar of the Lost, engraved with the names of every child known to have perished in bondage. Tens of thousands of names, with more uncovered each day. The galaxy watched with bated breath. Some feared Earth would seize power, but Earth did not crown itself ruler. Instead, the Terran High Council proposed something no one expected, a multi-species alliance with a singular law at its heart, the Children's Accord. Under the Accord, enslavement of any sapient juvenile was a capital crime. All member worlds were required to enforce protections for young sentients. The Terran fleet was granted enforcement rights across all Accord territories. Earth would not rule the stars. It would guard them. Colonel Cross stood in a quiet chamber aboard the Red Dawn. Before him stood the girl, formerly 3279C, now clean, dressed in a fresh uniform jacket 2 sizes too big, her small feet dangling off the edge of the briefing table. Her face bore the early marks of healing. Her eyes, once empty, held a faint spark. "You said I can pick my own name?" she said. Cross nodded. "Anything you want." She thought for a moment, then looked up. "Hope. I want to be Hope." Cross smiled for the first time in weeks. "That's a good name." Across the stars, things changed. On the shattered colony of Velcora, newly freed children painted murals of human soldiers walking through fire, carrying them to safety. On Rethalai Prime, alien parents named their newborns after Terran ships, Goliath, Dawn, Valor. And in the academic halls of newly liberated worlds, they taught the truth, that when Earth discovered its children were taken, it did not send diplomats. It sent warriors. In the Terran High Council chamber back on Earth, President Amina Dartsi delivered a broadcast to the galaxy. This war did not begin because we sought territory. It began because someone thought our children were weak, that they could be stolen, broken, sold. They were wrong. We are not monsters. We are not conquerors. But when you come for our young, when you touch even one innocent soul, we will rise as one people, one world, one fire, and we will burn away every chain in the universe. Earth showed no pity, and we never will. Not until every child sleeps free. In a distant star system, hidden on the edge of known space, a final slave vessel tried to run. Its engines flared as it breached the event horizon of a black hole, hoping to vanish into the unknown. But Earth had already predicted its route. A Terran interceptor, sleek and silent, emerged from stealth. Its message was short. "This is Earth. Release them, or be erased." Months passed, then a year, then 2. The Galactic Empire, as it once stood, was no more. In its place rose a fractured but freer galaxy. Species once enslaved began to thrive. Entire planets were repopulated with survivors and healers. Trade resumed under new banners, and the Terran ships still patrolled the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Children born in the new age would grow up hearing stories of the dark times, when innocence was shackled and monsters wore crowns. And they would hear of the day Earth stood up, not for power, not for glory, but for a single sacred truth. Children are never to be owned.